All right. Welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. As always, I'm Patrick and we are back. It's been a while. It's been about a month, a lot of moving, a lot of changes on my end, but I thought what better guest to come back strong with than Mr. Benjamin Balderson. What's up, brother?
Oh, just living out the spring. I had a wild ride this spring, brother. I got a new lab. I actually got a request. I'm probably gonna go make a video of that either tonight or tomorrow. Had to get a new lab because my other lab was not cutting the mustard. It was
Right.
well, I'm just doing too much. And then had all kinds of babies all over the place. We ended up actually getting some hay with some clover in it, and it gave some of our animals bloat, and we lost some and had lost some babies, and then just had a bunch more babies. And
Dang.
yeah, and then my milk goat, that was my youngest milk goat, that's really a baby, because what happened was her mom passed away trying to give birth to a brother that was just too big.
Mhm.
And even after she passed away, I tried cutting him out and had a hard time after I cut her belly out, getting him through the Pat pulled back through the canal. He was just a monster.
Yeah.
So the mom passed away, and so she got raised completely in the house because it was winter. So she's like my baby goat, and
Mhm.
bottle fed, and she'll ride around in the vehicle with me, and she'll follow me everywhere, and it's ridiculous. But she got mastitis real bad, so that's a crap deal, especially since she's a milk goat. So that was my milking future right there. So I'm gonna have to either get another milk goat or something. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do here.
Yeah, man. Well, it just goes to show you with all the crazy things in the world of these what ifs in people's minds, these ideas of what is concerning someone like yourself or people who are actually dealing with nature day in and day out, you start to realize, oh no, this is the shit that matters. All these, what did my ex or what did my husband, wife say about me, the way they looked at me, none of that matters when you're focusing on things that are actually in nature as much as you are. And I think this is important. That's good to hear these stories because right now a lot of people are becoming very, very aware that the shit you were saying, that I've been saying, that a lot of us have been saying is coming to fruition. So I thought, what better way to actually start with than saying, okay, people want to start growing stuff. They need to know how nature works. There's a desire. If somebody's coming to you, but Benjamin is like, hey, how do I start? Like, I want to just start this process. What are some professional tips and things that we can start doing to get the people who are now hearing what we're saying and going, okay, I'm willing to listen now?
Absolutely. So this is starting from the ground up. It's the best place to be, really. And and so a lot of people are finding, like LC King, that you have on. He's found a ton of success with the Curtis Stone method, and has done beautifully with it and done beautiful things. Now, I do a little different method. I'm more of a permaculture grower.
Mhm.
So the very first thing I would do is, for self-sufficiency, first thing you do is get a couple chickens. Yeah, you got eggs every morning. At the very least, you've got a couple eggs every day you can eat. They're real easy to have, and their manure is really nitrogen heavy. Now, what you're going to do first is you're going to need to start soil building. And soil building, myself personally, what I do is go around your property, and you're going to find your dark, moist areas. You're going to go into those, and you're going to find some mycelium, and it's going to look like white spider webbing type stuff. And you find that, and it's like a mold type thing.
Mhm.
It's actually a mycelium. It's not a mold, but mold comes late, with more conditions like that. But so that mycelium, that's what's going to be the base for your stuff. Now you're going to take, and what I use is a cement mixer, but the more conventional people use, they'll take like an aerator, like the little bubble bars that you put in the bottom of your fish tank,
Mhm.
and you put that in a bucket full of water. Then you put some of this mycelium in there and a couple of old baked potatoes, and then throw in some sea salt. It can't be bleached salt. You don't want that bleaching in there. You just want an all natural sea salt.
Mm.
You throw some of that in there. After a few days, what's going to happen is that's going to start foaming up. Anytime you move it, you're going to see it just foams up big. That's that mycelium populating. Now you want that. Now that you've got a nice mycelium mix in your cement mixer, you finish filling that up with water, about halfway up, and then I start throwing in manure. I use alpaca and goat manure. And then we'll take some activated carbon, which all you do for activated carbon is when you're doing your spring burns with your limbs and whatnot that you find around the yard, you light that on fire, and rather than let it all burn to ash, when it's nice glowing cherries, you go and spray that down with water, or you take it and put it in a bucket of water is an even better way, because then you save that smoke. And you go and mix that in there, and that's going to give you your activated carbon, because this is carbon-based life that we're trying to grow. Right. So let's give it some building blocks of carbon. Right. If you have some nice fish emulsions, some other things like that for micronutrients, it can go in there. If you don't have chicken or some other bird manure that's real nice and nitrogen heavy, a little bit of human urine mixed in there. Human urine, as opposed to animal urine, is very bioavailable for plants, as long as you aren't putting it in concentrated mixes. So a little bit of human urine is going to spike your nitrogen count, and it's very bioavailable nitrogen for the plants. Yeah. And so you're going to want to start taking and just top feeding all of that into your soil, because as a permaculture grower, you're only once possibly are you ever going to till your soil up, and that's if you need to, in order to break up a bunch of the rocks and things in order to get your soil usable. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, after that, the most you're going to do is take one of those little, it looks like a bunch of little stars on there, and you just go and roll that over top of your soil, and that mostly knocks down and breaks up the old plant material that was there. It's not really doing that much to disturb the ground, because right. The whole point to doing this mycelium is that a plant does not have a stomach. What the stomach for a plant is the earth. Mm-hmm. And inside the earth, where the root zone is where you want all these mycelium. You're talking about bacteria and fungi, and any food that gets put on that area, that bacteria and fungi break down just like your probiotics in your stomach. Right. And now your plants can eat up what they need, and your plants are in your soil because of that. If you have a nice heavy fungi mix, you're going to keep your pH nice and balanced, and you aren't going to have a lot of the problems. And then you aren't going to get weeds, because weeds are actually a reparative mechanism. When your pH gets really out of balance, these weeds will appear, and they'll suck that pH, the components that are causing that imbalance, until your pH drops back down. In a really well-kept garden where you're paying attention to your soil biology, you're not weeding that garden. Right. And so now that we've got a soil that's ready, and we're building up our soil, and this is something that's, every year it's going to get better and better, because this is called a living soil. Mm-hmm. And so every year you do this and add to this, and don't tear up your biome. Mm-hmm. It's going to get better and better, and you're going to be just shocked with the differences in your fruits. Right. Fruit being the beans or melons or whatever, the what you're harvesting. Now that you've got that, now we're going to take and we're going to look at our climate conditions. So like myself personally, I live in a 9B now. I used to live in a 9A, which is basically a high desert. From a 9A zone, what plants are going to grow the best? And then I can slightly variance from that, understanding that I can microclimate somewhat the conditions by creating watering, shading, things like that. Right. So, but as a general basis, I'm going to want plants that do well in 9A climate. All right. So that's an easy enough thing. You just punch in climate zone, your zip code. They'll have all the information there for you. Now that I see what plants grow well in my area, now I'm going to look at what plants I like and then understand that plants, just like with the soil, there's a symbiosis here. So if I say I want to grow corn, which is a very common, thing for people to grow, I understand that corn is going to have a large rigid stalk. It's going to eat nitrogen like mad. That stuff eats nitrogen like it's going out of style.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant beans next to the corn, and I'm going to pick whatever kind of beans that I want in order to be next to this corn. Now, beans are what is called a nitrogen fixer. Now, so what they're doing is taking the nitrogen, such as the raw chicken manure, and that's converting that into nitrogen that's fixed so the other plants can now eat it.
Yeah.
So these two things are working in a symbiosis together. And the other thing that the corn is going to do is make a nice trellis for the beans to crawl up, which the corn's not going to have any problem with in any way. That stalk's nice and big and stiff.
Mm-hmm.
So now the other thing I can look at is, well, now what else do I want? Them beans are going to be real low to the ground, and that corn doesn't provide a lot of cover. So now I want some ground cover plants. So we can look at putting like a broadleaf squash, something like that, and training it not to grab on, because that's the thing when you're growing like this, you just walk through, and if I see that squash or melon plant grabbing onto something, I don't want it to, because that's what squash and melon send them little tendrils out and
Mm-hmm.
grab onto things, and they'll choke your other plants.
Right.
And you just snap that little tendril off. That's no big deal. And then just get that that vine going where you want.
Yeah.
And now that's going to do two things. Exposed soil is soil that the sun directly is cooking. And so that's going to kill your biome just like tilling will. And you'll notice that in areas where you see dry, uncovered soil, you're going to see how much the blackness leaves that soil and it becomes much lighter soil. That's literally the oil in the life leaving. Stop. Yes, I saw the dog.
My dog's the same.
Exactly. So that is the life leaving that soil. Covered soil is going to maintain that life, and it's going to keep that oil, and the sun's not going to bake it off. And then the water is going to stay higher in the soil also, because just like Victor Schauberger showed, when trees in that shade is over the soil, a spring in a spring area, they went and cut it down and built a monastery I think it was in the spring stayed, but once they took it, or no, after they cut the trees down, it dried up. Then they built a building next to there, and once it got that shade again, now the trees obviously bring up the water saturation through their root structures 100%. Right. But even just the shading made that spring reappear. Mm. So what you need is ground cover to keep that from happening on your ground, and your sun from beating up your smaller plants like your beans. So now you've got your ground covered, you've got your food covered, and all you're going to go do is this is why I use a cement mixer, because I go through quite a bit of this. Mm-hmm. And as I just dump that into a 5-gallon bucket, I usually fill it almost half full with this manure mixture that I make. People don't realize if you have your soil biome sufficiently built, you can actually just put pure liquid manure right onto your plants, and the biome will break it down fast enough to keep it from burning. But I mean, you've got to have a serious built up biome to do that kind of thing. I wouldn't recommend trying it. Yeah. But just to make you understand that, the amount of burn that your plant gets from overfeeding is in direct relation to the biome of the plant. If you have a sufficient biome, you can throw all kinds of food on there. If you have no biome, a little bit of food will overdo it.
Yeah.
So we get the biome built, we get the right plants in there, and then we start top feeding. And now, boom, you're growing food. And there's so many foods that, like you right away in the spring, greens, I understand a lot of people don't like salads, things like that so much, but you get enough greens every single day. That's what Lucas calls his veggie boxes,
Yeah.
is a lot of greens and such. Um, you can do, like, Lucas farms less than an acre and makes a full-time business out of it, feeds his family, the whole nine. And if he had animals, you could be taking those leftovers, throwing them to the chickens. Now you're not paying for chicken feed, and
Yeah.
your chickens are giving out these vibrant, deep orange yolk eggs that are full of vitamins and nutrients. It's a wonderful symbiotic system. And then once you reach that point, you go and get bees in order to have something that's pollinating, in order to bring your food, or your fruiting up to power. And now you've got your own sweetener.
Well, and this is, and I loved how you broke it down. And for a lot of people, that might sound like it's a lot, and it is a learning experience. And this is the thing from my point of someone who's new to this, is that you start to realize that, yes, there's a lot happening, but at the end of the day, when you allow yourself to just remember, as you keep saying the word symbiosis, if there's a symbiosis, when we talk about the fact that we are part of this symbiotic system with nature, and you allow yourself to just remember that and just keep telling yourself that, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to plant stuff that doesn't go well. Things aren't going to go. It's just simple as then just going, okay, well, why? Just starting, but it's just starting of knowing, like, all right, hey, in the most simple ways, I need soil. I need good, healthy soil. Okay. I need obviously some sort of seeds. Got it. Great. Okay. I need some sort of manure, or as you said, some urine, which is something that I was doing at one of my old properties. And now we moved. So now I'm starting to introduce different things here. I'm in a different time zone. So it's all new to me. So I went from a
Right.
place where I'm learning how to farm and garden, figuring out this, I was in Jersey and now I'm in Hawaii. So now it's figuring out this whole new place. And guess what? It's a lot. It's confusing at times, but it's, when you break it down simply, going healthy soil, I need seed, I need water, I need to now give it life. It becomes that much easier. And when you realize, as you said, it's no different inside you, your gut biome, the probiotics, understanding how your body is dealing with funguses, bacteria, it's a one-to-one correlation. And this is why my original idea was talking about, and we'll get to some of the why we're not on a spinning ball, but really not just about proving anything wrong, but understanding that, as I said, we're connected to the system. The system isn't here and then over here. It's all intertwined, and we need to grasp that, because with all the shit that is going down, you're seeing inflation. This isn't conspiracy. You're seeing it with wood. You're seeing it with the housing markets. You're seeing it all over these places. People are going, what do? I don't know what to do. And this is going, all right, well, if you really want to make
Drastic inflation.
crash,
Drastic.
and I would, I'm kind of done with my point, but if I can get your input on with this inflation, what is your thoughts? What is your views on that? Because
So
it's
the inflation is going to get infinitely worse. Um, People don't realize that, you can go look this up quick, that last year the Fed dumped more money into the system than had been dumped into the system in our entire history.
right.
Well, if I have this much and it has a certain value, and then I go and add all this, that value never really changed.
Right.
So this is very similar to like splitting a stock or something.
Right.
Well, now my dollar that I had before, when there was only one of these, now there's two of these same dollars. Now my dollar's worth half as much at
Right.
best.
Yeah.
So we haven't even hit that point yet. I mean, it's gotten ugly already, but has it hit the point where it's going to be? Absolutely not. This is going to get infinitely worse. And then as the government keeps just pumping money into the system and handing out these stimulus checks and such,
Right.
well, back in the day, the way that this was maintained was, for every dollar that they printed, there was either a certain amount of silver set aside or a certain amount of gold set aside, that dollar was basically a place marker for.
Exactly.
It represented that weight in silver or gold. Now there's nothing, well, nothing that most people understand to back that. What's really backing it is the manpower of the United States person who's going to put this much money into the system, and they're going to tax you for this much money
Right.
and blah blah blah, so you're going to be worth this much overall in your life, and that's what's the place marker at this point. But trying to get that through to people, holy Jesus.
Yeah.
um so because there's nothing so tangible, and so because gold and silver have their own weight or their own value no matter what.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I take a nugget of gold and I walk into France, I walk into Mexico, I walk into South America, the Congo. I'm going to be able to take this gold and it's going to have its own innate value that I'm going to be able to trade to somebody for something.
Right.
If I need supper in a hotel room, hey man, I don't got no money, but hey, I will trade you this. Yeah, I'll figure it out. Give me the gold.
Yeah.
That's real simple deal. Now, so what they're basing the money off of has no innate value.
Yeah.
It's got to be a convinced value. I've got this slave that is going to work, and I promise you I'm going to steal so much from him throughout his lifetime, and I'll give a cut of that to you, and blah blah blah. This all gets real convoluted and has no innate value. So when they dump money back into the system in that kind of a fashion, all that's doing is literally inflating, and people are cheering for it, screaming for it. They're at this point, they're like, they apparently think that this is just a free-for-all game, and you can just print as much money as you want, and then we can all just have stuff.
Right.
They're talking about a universal basic income. Well, if nobody's producing, then there's a huge problem. Your gross national product and the money that your country has throughout the year are supposed to be pretty damn similar. You should be producing at least what your country's value is. Well, when you talk about universal basic income, that ends. Not that we've produced anything in particular since Clinton signed NAFTA and we opened up all the borders in order to send all our businesses to other countries. So that way we could have small children do the same work that adults did here for a quarter an hour.
Right.
And then they can just ship the items back here and just pay a small tariff instead of paying, an actual adult worker to make the product. Well, after Clinton signed NAFTA and all of our production went to other countries, nothing gets produced here anyways. Well, that's just going to get much worse at this point, because now we don't even have middleman jobs, where before everybody here wanted to be like somebody that sold somebody else's something and they never made anything nor even touched the product half the time. Right. Or a telemarketer bill collector. Now that all these jobs are also getting shipped off, what do?
Right. Well, this is also the bigger point that, I've been trying to talk to people, and I know others are speaking up about it, is going, we're here to help people see these realities. And it's very clear that some people just don't want to see it. They would prefer not to see it because the consequences of dealing with that reality is too much compared to just doing what's happening now. Like, for example, as you were saying about these stimulus checks, my mother-in-law was telling us how she was getting her surfboard. She's older. She likes to go and paddle on the waves when she can, but she was getting a customized surfboard, and that they were super busy, the gentleman was saying, because everyone was getting these stimulus checks and spending all their money on these stimulus checks. However, the market here is getting even crazier. It's so expensive. Real estate, obviously groceries, there's only so much they can ship here. Obviously, with all the ports being backed up, you're seeing things are delayed. So it's like you start looking at it from that point and you're going, how is it that people are just willy-nilly spending on surfboards? And you realize, one, maybe people have enough other than just money. They have farms, they have land, great. But a lot of people don't. And it's like a matter of going, okay, for those who don't know and they really are just being naive and choosing, that's your life. Hey, do what you got to do. But for those who want to understand that, look, this is the reality of what's happening, it's nothing to be scared about, nothing to be fearful. Because as we said, if you can start growing and producing and just doing the bare minimums, you're already in the right direction. Because as you said, it's right now, it's about your labor your work labor that is being traded on these markets. Fact. This isn't conspiracy. It is what it is. So moving on, going, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, if I'm taking my labor towards my own properties to small tribes, communities of people, my own land or shared land, it's then going, oh, frick, this guy or this family, they're not participating right now. We need them to participate. Well, we're not participating. Are you sure? Nah, I'm good. Here's some money. It's not worth anything. Damn it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's the whole thing is once you quit seeking what they are offering, the whole game stops.
Yeah.
Once you pick up and just quit and you say, no, I'm not playing your game, they lose every bit of power they ever had. It's amazing. And at the end of the day, most of us spend our entire day fighting just to have a home, a roof above our heads, your basic home, uh, food on the table, and heat. That's really what most of us want. Get a spouse, pop out a couple kids that look like you. It'll make you feel good. You'll be happy, and that's what you basically do the rest of your life. Well, when we realize that we don't have to pay them for that, that's a privilege that they've decided that, well, they're pretending like it's a privilege, and that's something you were born here to do. A deer doesn't decide it needs to pay rent to some dickwad because it was born.
Right.
It's just going to run around eating the grass, doing what nature tells it to do. That's what we should be doing, and instead we don't.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I obviously, this might be a softball question. Why is it then that you, from your point of view, so many people are finding themselves not following that or being maybe hesitant to accept that as the reality of like, hey, you have more rights if you're willing to take them. You have more control over your life if you're willing to take it. Why do you think people are hesitant to be, I guess, I don't want to say sovereign, but just being the man or the living man or living woman that they were born to be?
Well, that's two things. And for each person, they had to put a different hook on. Half the people, basically, it's the hell hook. It's the, oh my God, what if? Look, we're going to make sure that if you live in the city, that we've got systems and programs in place. You will always have power. You will always have food. You will always have a roof above your head. Now, if you take responsibility for those things yourself, there is no guaranteed I got food. Like we started out the beginning of the show. I'm sitting here going, well, my milk goat, whose milk I depended on, is no longer going to be capable of milking. What do I do now? Granted, she's not my only source. I have two milk cows and things like that. But either way, this is something that when you're responsible for yourself, you've got to figure out for yourself. I don't get to rely on if my power goes out, the power company just comes and I get to nag at the power company. It's been 2 whole hours. My phone is almost dead. Like, if my power goes out, I got to truck my ass outside, or into my electrical room, whichever the case may be, or both, and start troubleshooting what's going on with my system that is now no longer functioning. And if something's broken in it, I'm going to be liable to make the payment and get that fixed and whatnot.
Right.
So it's a way easier system. It really is. And that's the other thing. Not only do they throw out the fear, now we've got comfort. It's nice to be able to have, I tell you what, your average person, when I first moved off grid, because I was a farm kid, lived on a farm,
Mhm.
and we sold our farm and moved off grid. And we thought that we were pretty, enlightened about, how we lived, and we tried to conserve and live right. And as soon as we moved off grid, oh, wow, eyes got open right now. We thought we were basically running nothing for power compared to everybody else we knew. We
Right.
move off grid, we're pulling 2.5 kilowatts an hour. 2.5 kilowatts, dear God. Like,
Yeah.
now that's no big deal in the city, Who cares? That's like $2 worth of power or something. Nobody cares. And and that's during the high times. I'm talking about during the high times. But when you're living off a battery bank, it's cumulative throughout the entire time. So you got to count that high time in. That's going to pull off a whole lot off your entire load ability. So when you move off grid, then all of a sudden, because I can see directly what kind of power I'm consuming, well, let's go do this. And I start unplugging all these stupid devices. And before you know it, after you're paying enough attention, you're like keeping on 160-watt lamp, and
Mhm.
things like that. Because I want to make sure my fridge can stay running, because that's more important than me having lights on to where I can like sit and shave in the middle of the living room. It's so bright,
Right.
perform surgery,
Yeah.
things like that. So you start really, as you're living it, really understanding these things and
Right.
understanding how comfortable it was.
Totally.
It's comfortable to have your house. Like your normal person in a city, they walk over to the wall, they go, doot, 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 doot. That's the temperature I like, and that is the temperature their house stays the entire year.
Yeah.
I go to bed in the winter. I have a wood stove. At night, I want that heat to last throughout the night for a lot of it, or it won't last throughout, but throughout a lot of it. So I'll bank some coals, put a nice big log in there. Well, now that thing's just roaching, and I go upstairs and it's too damn hot to sleep, and you have to open up all the windows upstairs and let some of that heat out, and you fall asleep. And then 2 in the morning you wake up and the fire's dimmed down and it's nothing but coals, and you're shutting them windows and freezing balls, and
Hmm.
you get up in the morning and you quick throw on clothes and start moving around, and you're glad to go outside and do chores to get your blood moving, so you warm up. And um today or tomorrow it's supposed to be over 100. you know Come noon, we're basically going to go up to the house and lay around. We have a little stream, maybe go dip your feet in the stream, just kind of lay in the shade. The weather starts depending, telling you what to do. You live by it.
Yep.
Well, that's inconvenient. That's not comfortable. That sucks. I like being 68 degrees all day. I like it when it's 110 out, to be able to sit and eat ice cream slowly while I'm sitting around in my sweater. You know,
Yeah.
that's the crazy thing. You see city people, it's like they purposely dress opposite of what the weather says,
Yep.
and then set their temperature to, I'm gonna sit around half naked in the winter and have my house set at 75. And then
Right.
I'm gonna sit around in a parka in the summer and have my house set at 65.
Well,
Like,
what's so funny but so true about that is when we talk about resiliency and human potential, all these things you see, as much as yes, there's this shifts obviously in different seasons. You're dealing with really cold or really hot. What you see is because we are so comfortable at finding that perfect temperature, we don't know how to respond then to these drastic changes. As you just said, if we're dependent on a system, which all of us are to some degree, maybe you not, but like myself, is going, do I even know what to do? Like in regards, say the electricity is out, and I don't even know how to change or deal with the electricity, but just knowing how to be in that uncomfortable state, do I know how to do that? And this is the thing that a lot of us at just the most basic level can't do. Like you said, oh my God, 2 hours, my phone's going to die. Or, oh, 2 hours, even in the shade, I'm not used to feeling what 100 degrees feels like. And we talk about wanting to be safe. We want to talk about being, in a well, taken care of society, where it's like, here's the thing: if you become so dependent and you can't even feel that experience, that shift, that's no one else but you. And this is what it always comes back to: is the person, the self of just going, dude, what are you going to do? What will you do if there's a rolling blackout? What are you going to do? And it's not about being fearful. It's just about knowing, can you be okay? I mean, when we were in Jersey, we had the power go out, and it was really hot, but when you open the windows, you realize just like, hey, this is going to be hot. I'm used to weather changes. I do cold showers. I do go out in the heat, where it's like, yeah, it's sweaty, it's uncomfortable, but you're going, all right, where, when that breeze comes, do I have an appreciation for that breeze? Am I connecting to what nature's already giving me? If it's there, right? And it seems so silly, but when you start to connect with nature, even in the extremes, you find appreciation, you find and pay attention to all those pieces that we just completely ignore. Like, instead of like, hey, it's super hot out here, but I also know I know where the sun's going to be, so I know where I'm going to get the most shade for the day. Little things like
Yep.
that, right? And these are super important things at the base level for a lot of us to start paying attention to. Like you said, we have a creek. First thing I did when I moved here is I going, okay, where are all the fruit trees? I'm in a very vibrant, very fruitful island. Where are all the fruit trees? And I look, I'm like, mango, 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 papaya, mango, calamansi, this, that. Oh, there's basil over there. And just knowing, okay, what's around? All right, hey, say the water runs out. Where's the stream? Okay, I know when I walked up there, I saw a stream. Simple. And then
Yep.
you don't even have to know how to filter it. It's just knowing where is it? Or, hey,
You
I know
betcha.
the sun, obviously sun tracking when you're growing, that's a big thing when you're growing food, is knowing where is your sun, right? And that's a little more technical, but anything you want to add to that? I just my little rant there.
Nope, that's perfect. Exactly. You now all of a sudden you've got ready food by you, you've got ready water, you're going to be able to come up with a heat source.
Right.
You're good to go. What more do you need? That's what most of us are fighting for, going and serving somebody 10 hours a day of our life
Mm-hmm.
so that way we can have that. Why? It's already there.
Yep.
You let somebody convince you that you need to pay them for that.
Yep. Well, and it's also having somebody convince you that it's not in abundance, that
Yes.
it's about to all fall apart in that regard, and you realize when you take a minute and just look outside your door, even if you're in the city, look and see if you can find any green. If you found green, you have a place to build abundance of food. You really do. If you know where there's even a creek, you can get a water supply that you can filter out. It does take a little time, being that we are so distant
And
from
you
it.
don't even honestly typically need to filter. That whole filtration this system thing, that's something that the city people taught. Like I drink out of a mountain stream. Like at
Right.
my last house, it was a mountain stream that came right out of Mount Lassen. Cows waded in it, whatever, upstream. It didn't hurt us none. The water was delicious.
Well, I was saying more
I'm
just
sure
like,
it had cow piss and whatever else in it. Who cares?
well, I was saying
Get
like,
over it.
well, like in New York City, right? When I was there was a lot of, you're getting mostly ocean water around. You're getting minimal in the north part of it where it's a higher elevation. You get some runoff, but it wasn't as much. So that's why I'm just talking about filtration there. But like here, I mean, you go upstream,
Right.
you're gonna find some good water for the most part. But
Yeah.
yeah. So let's bring it to what I originally was going to talk about. So all these pieces about connecting, symbiosis, the changes. How is it with all these that this place that we live? How is it that it can't be like it has to be anything but what we're told in regards to its shape? And it's not about making it, a fight of, flat or ball, but like let's talk about this symbiosis you keep talking about and how it pertains then to this place we call Earth, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Understanding that everything in this world is just an energetic exchange. There's an energetic exchange in every single thing.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing ever really, energy doesn't ever die. It just changes form and moves on.
Right.
That's all that we're talking about ever. And so we're living in a closed system. This we're not living in this crazy open system that's just rocketing through space that's being held together by literal magic.
Right.
Somehow the vacuum of space, as we pass through it at an extreme speed, so it's not like this is a stagnant vacuum that we've reached, that it's reached saturation for the air particles, so it's only able to pull it so far and it's saturated itself or something. This is rocketing through space. The air should literally just rip right off of the planet,
Mm-hmm.
much less talking about the actual vacuum of space being able to suck all the particles off of it.
Right.
So it's ridiculous in two different ways, you know.
So, well,
But we're living in a close. Go ahead.
no, so kind of talking about, ripping things apart. The one thing that people say is the law of thermodynamics specifically. That's one thing where it shows that it just possibly can't be. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about that, for someone like myself
The,
who is aware?
again, we're talking about where energy transfers, and it doesn't really, it can't, it's got to transfer exactly. It doesn't ever really change. You're not talking about when you experience like loss, especially through heat, you're not really experiencing, you're experiencing loss because you wanted it to all get channeled right here. But if you add the energy that went through there plus what transferred through heat, you're gonna, it's actually gonna combine into the same exact number, because you can't dissipate energy. You
Right.
just can't. And so where is all of this coming from? All of this energy that supposedly we're using to do all of this. And where is it transferring to? It doesn't, none of it makes sense.
Right.
So when you're sitting here, first thing you understand is we're in a closed system. And that blasts away 99% of the stories that we're told.
Right.
And including the big bad one that the United States sent a man to, into space.
Right.
And even that one of them very first men specifically, you can find him on a video explaining to a little girl that we can't get past the Van Allen radiation belts.
Right. Right.
Like he's, didn't you do that, bro?
Yeah.
I thought you did it. But because we lived in a closed system, like today I saw just on Facebook, they had some meme of some guy that planted a plant like 80 years ago, put it in a terrarium or whatever you call those, and stoppered it. And he hadn't had to water it or do anything in like 40 years,
Right.
because inside this closed system, the water is going to keep recycling. Everything's going to keep transferring into another thing,
Right.
and nothing's ever going to really leave this.
Right.
So it just keeps recycling and recycling, and it stays perfect. The planet's no different.
Right.
This place that we live on.
Well,
Um,
it's just simple as it's just going back to our old science books. Like you watch the precipitation in water going through its cycle through the oceans,
yes,
condensation, all these things goes back up. Like we've learned this, and then
yeah,
you learn obviously how plant life works and photosynthesis and this same exact thing. All these, it's all just constantly being ingrained and enclosed in the system. And then we're saying, well, we have other outside sources, like, we'll say like, oh, a comet, or you might see a shooting star or whatever, but it's like, but yet no one is seeing
well,
comets.
now who says that that's outside though?
But this is the thing, is people say it's outside and it's going,
Right,
well, what's from within? And we can sit there and say, well, it came from without, but with no factual proof.
right,
You know what I mean?
because in my opinion, and uh, what stars basically are is energy centers where they're pulling a particular metal. Typically it's mostly metal
Hmm.
that gets pulled in there, and occasionally that reaches the right state where they bind together and make a solid metal again, and then that will end up falling out of the sky because now it's an actual solid metal instead of a plasma state metal.
Yeah.
um so if you look, really, when you look at the stars, most, pretty much any star outside any of the bodies that you're looking at in the sky, period, no, whatever you want to call them, luminaries, whatever, when you look at them, they don't have a body. It's
Mhm.
just a light. And that's literally all that you're seeing. Now, the moon is one of the ones that actually looks like it has a body. Like you should be able to reach out and just grab that bad boy.
Mhm.
Now, the moon alchemically is made of silver. So if silver is pulled together in that particulated state, if you energize it the energy will actually bond these silver particles together, only not really. It's like a fake bond where the energy in and of itself will create this bond in between the particles, and it'll look like the thing is takes on a solidity.
Hmm.
And then when that as that energy then leaves, it leaves as a luminescence.
Hmm.
And so, and this is an easy thing to look up. It's just, looking up the way silver particles work. So then as that energy leaves, so what we could have, so what my theory on it is we have this, when the moon is in its solid state or pulled together like that, it becomes susceptible to degeneration because
Mhm.
it's solid. It's not in its plasma state. As it degenerates, we've got your basic galvanic cell. So the oxygenation happens. This lets out 2 electrons. Those 2 electrons go over and impregnate the sun.
Right.
Now, after that, we have an imbalance now, because now this was the negative and this was, now we've sent over these 2 electrons because they were even. Now this is going to send over 2 ions in order to balance this out.
Right.
But now that these ions are here, the ions are actually going to bind with the sun, and then the sun's going to release more free energy,
Right.
i.e., these electrons that are initially injected into it. Well, then as the sun releases this impregnated energy or star energy, that's going to that's going to soak into the moon, and that's going to charge the moon once a month.
Right.
During the once a month, this is going to happen. And that's why you see that the energy just, it soaks it in, and then it moves into a full face until it's fully soaked in, and then it slowly releases it. So it's not really the sun isn't lighting the moon, but the energy of the sun is what's binding it together in that solid looking form, which is then giving it the ability to degenerate, sending over the uh,
Right.
electrons and the ions. So that's also why when the moon loses that energy, why it takes on a translucence, and people talk about they can see things through the moon
Mm-hmm.
during when it's completely gone, and you can see things through it because now these particles, the bond has escaped. They start becoming looser and moving apart from each other, because what was filling in those cracks was literally raw energy.
And that's coming from the sun.
Yes.
So what
So this is a symbiosis, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
and would most people then be able to say that the experiences of seeing through the moon come from more winter times where the sun is less energetic?
Yes. Yes. And you're going to have, and then, like I said, at those times when the moon becomes dark, those particles start becoming looser. That there's less energy to fill in the cracks. It takes on a translucence almost.
Well, this
Uh, so it's a really very interesting thing.
You see, but this it is interesting because this goes to, when people will say like, oh, the reason why the moon is lit is because of the sun. The sun lights the moon, and we can sit here and argue and be like, no, it doesn't. Yes, it does. And the reality is there's always some truth to what is out there. It's figuring out, okay, well, what is the truth? And
Right.
and as you just said there, it's like they're different, but they're of one of the same thing. And this goes back to us being a part of this system, of knowing you're a part of it, you are in it, everything is combined, working together. It's like when I train people and saying like, hey, you might have an injury here, but we can't just look at the one spot, we have to look at everything. And it's more work, it sometimes can get a little tedious, but at the same time, that's how you're going to be that much closer to figuring out what is going on. And so, as you just said, it's like, okay, yes, there is an exchange happening here. So that's why when we say, hey, you can wake up every morning, the sun's going to be there and the moon's going to be there at night. There's no question about it. That has never changed. So it's like for that to happen, then just to simply ask, well, what's the relationship there? What is the exchange that's happening for this to happen? And as you just said, it's like, okay, well, when you're getting more energy from the sun, it's taking on those ions, those transferring of electrons, then you're seeing, when it's at its highest, yeah, you're going to see the bonds are tighter, making it more of that solid, right? And what I guess is you, well, like, even going back to what you're saying about the corn and beans, things that are going to be more symbiotic, or as you say a lot of times, bioavailable, right? And that's all this is. When you know that we're in an enclosed system with transferring of energies always happening, some things will be more bioavailable than others,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so then in regards to that energy, then obviously coming on the plant, coming to the plants, is there things that can man-made that affect that bioavailability from our sun, from the moon? Are there things that can be interjected in order to, again, tamper with our ability to have that exchange?
Oh, absolutely. One of the big ones that you're seeing is with chemtrails,
Mhm.
where they're spraying this particulated aluminum all over the place. And what's going on is we're seeing that that's literally making everything more fire susceptible.
Mhm.
And what else it's doing, and this is also happening through Roundup,
Yep.
uh, is that they're stopping our ability to access our cell salts.
Yep.
So, and the same thing's happening to the plants and the trees, is they're not being able to access their salts. And the funny thing about that is people wouldn't realize there's a reason that sodium is called the Aquarian salt, the water bearer, because you need that in order to be able to take in salt. There's a symbiosis between these salts in the water.
Mhm.
And so when you lose one side, you lose the other side also. Um, and now you're not able to do any of your functions. So you're seeing that a lot of these plants are dying, and they're dying really crazy deaths, and these trees are dying from the inside out. They're
Yeah.
literally, you cut a tree down and there'll be just a dead spot, just dead center in that tree, just all the way through. um, well, this aluminum is stopping them from taking in their cell salts.
Right.
And now these trees are losing out entirely and becoming much more susceptible to fire. And we're seeing all this fire everywhere. And I mean, these fires, they're so unnatural. Like just today, there's a fire up by Whiskey Town in California. And I drive through that area every couple weeks. And that area is where the car fire was.
Mhm.
So that area, there's nothing there to burn anymore.
Yeah.
And this fire is supposedly spread to 25 acres, and they've got bombers on it and all this. And
Yeah.
I'm going, for what? It's not grassland. There's a little bit of scrub brush and dead trees. Like that's all that's left there. And somehow it's still just igniting, like basically like they're putting chemicals on it specifically to make it burn.
Yeah.
And what it is this is droughting out the water. It's literally just pushing it away now, because like I said, without the water bearing salts, the water can't stay. Two different things either. And then if you get the waters to start going out, if you get an overabundance of salt, and this is where they're talking about when you salt the land,
Mhm.
if you get an overabundance of salt, now you set it over into a severe imbalance. So now you can't take water because now you've got an overabundance of salt. And so what it does is your salt to water ratio also sets your electroconductivity.
Mhm.
And most plants run at about 1700 ppm, which is like a 1.76 electroconductivity, I think.
Mhm.
um, well, you get it above that, and the ppm being the salt count, parts per million. You get it above that, and now it's going to reverse the polarity of the plant, and the plant's going to become just a salt dominant, and it'll literally dump its water clean out of itself.
Right. So
So
it's like its own, almost its own suicide or something like that.
yes, yes, it's a horrible thing to watch when you're farming, especially like so many of your farmers today, they're trying so hard to get as much food in there as
Mhm.
possible and just try and get as much growth out of anything.
Right.
And especially like with cannabis growers, when you see the indoor growing where they're really able to like hydroponically just start dumping food in there, and then their plant will just shrivel up and die into nothing overnight. And it's because you reverse the polarity of the plant and it dumped its water out.
Yeah.
That's because you exceeded the electroconductivity barrier.
Well,
Um,
but this is the thing that's, it's hard for people to, I mean, people get it, understand, but those who don't know, it's realizing is we get our food from somewhere. The majority of farmers who need the land, they're having a direct reaction, whether it's from the government, whether it's, God's doing, coming from the Bible, whatever the case is, it's happening. And so going back to the original thing I was talking about, is when you understand that this is happening on these massive scales to farmers, to people just trying to, even some commercial, incentive in regards to a career or a job, these people are getting affected every single day. And if they're getting affected and they can't produce for the masses, or at least to some degree, or even their town, what does then that leave with? It means that each and every person needs to start, to their best ability, taking action. Because as you said, it's Roundup, it's the glyphosate, it's all these things. I was just, Lucas showed me something with, and I tried to get him on, we're going to do it later, George Wiseman, about the Browns gas. And talk,
oh yeah, that's some good stuff.
yeah,
Holy.
oh
Oh,
yeah,
I want to talk to that guy too. I'd like to sit
dude.
down and have a.
Well, he's busy right now, but once he's good, he said, we'll do it. We'll do three, we'll jump on, all of us. And, I mean, I'm always on to
Nice.
listen and learn, but the big thing he was talking about, and you may understand this, is being that we're mostly hydrogen, the
Hmm.
majority of our, this body, this vessel is hydrogen. It's seeing that a lot of this disease, we're already in a depletion of hydrogen. Well, why are we in depletion of hydrogen? And one of the big reasons is because most of the hydrogen that we get from the foods, or we get through anything that's coming through the body, is coming in that colon. It's from the bacteria in the colon. And understanding that glyphosate and antibiotics and all these things literally take that, as we said, the bioavailability of those plants or the food that we're consuming that has even any nutritional value, and it's removing our ability to absorb the hydrogen. And so that's something
Absolutely.
going in.
And then the other thing, glyphosate. I'm sorry, you broke up for a minute. I didn't realize you were still talking.
You can go. I'm right. I'm listening.
um, Glyphosate, what its original use was to remove the salts from boilers. It
Mm,
is a salt stripper. And the reason that they switched that they started using that as a weed killer is because they saw that when what would spill out of these boilers onto the ground freaking killed everything,
right.
just dead. It did not come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started realizing that, well, that is literally made to strip the cell salts.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing was to begin with, was a salt cleaner for a boiler.
Right. And this is the thing, is we've been uh, marketed and programmed to believe, well, what makes a great yard? It needs to be just completely clean Bermuda grass, which if you ask any farmer, Bermuda grass is the worst thing you could possibly have, unless you have grass that you can feed your cows and your animals. That it's like a blanket of weeds. It's gonna take away from your plants, your soil content. And that's what we've been told. This is what is the way you should.
I would actually rather have weeds than Bermuda grass,
Mhm.
because weeds, as I was explaining earlier, are reparative mechanisms
Right.
that are going to bring your soil back into pH.
Yep.
All Bermuda grass is a vampire. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything good. It doesn't produce any fruit. It eats food like mad. It's as voracious as corn
Right.
without producing any of the things that you want from it.
Right.
And it just blankets the land and sucks everything out of it.
And this is the whole point of bringing it back to the individual, is knowing there's a selling point about it. We're falling for it. We're not realizing, as you said, the weeds is expressing, it's communicating with us that something needs to happen, or there is something happening that is trying to get nutrients, just like your body is trying to get nutrients every single day and needs it. And when it's not, it's going to communicate with you in something that's going to get your attention to say, hey, I need you to listen. We need some shit. Same thing with your, and what do? Well, oh, we're told the weeds, that's the problem. Round it up. Obviously, we're adding the glyphosate, we're adding all these other types of herbicides, fungicides, all these chemicals, unnatural to the land. And even then, the resilience of the plants will still go, we're still going to come back stronger. We're going to let you know we need this to survive. Same thing with the body. Oh, I can't be sick right now. I can't have this. Oh, I'm getting, I'm stressed. I'm getting an itch. It's telling you something. You're missing it. You're not seeing the picture, the bigger picture here. And then we get to a point where it's like, well, how did this happen? This is the big thing. How did we get here? And it's simple. Break it down to what I've said earlier. You're a part of the system. Listen to the system. You're not separate from it. We need to connect with the system in which we are in. Not fighting about these mundane, asinine types of conversations, and focusing on, look, do you want to be healthy? Do you want to live in a place that thrives? I do. And if you do, how do we get there together? And this is what it goes. And people say, well, how, oh, you're trying to connect all these pieces. Well, we're demonstrating to here how this shit connects.
Yep.
Because it is all one thing. Anything you want to add?
Nope. That's exactly perfect. And the thing is the thing I just want to add is don't take this information and go and spread it to everybody else. Don't. Go home and start doing it. Yeah. Go home and start building. And as you start building, you're going to be shocked how people come out of the woodworks and just start paying attention. Yeah. You're going to be shocked how many people pick up when you do. When you just start talking about the information, nobody cares. Right. What they find interesting is that you are actually doing it, and they start seeing it be successful. Yeah. And then when that happens, those same neighbors are going to come back to you and say, I saw you raising turkeys and that's pretty cool, but I like duck eggs. So I went and got some ducks, and I thought I'd maybe get some rabbits. A lot of people are meat eaters. I'm not, but maybe I'll trade you a couple rabbits and some duck eggs for some turkey eggs and a turkey for Thanksgiving or whatever. And now all of a sudden, this entire system is just going to start growing and growing. And what we have is understanding that we aren't that far out from this system. In World War II, when there wasn't hardly any supermarkets in the country, and we had a problem with our production lines, how did people continue surviving? Because they got most of their basic living needs taken care of in their own neighborhood. Yep. And this is the beauty of what you're doing. Obviously what Owen's doing, what Lucas is doing, what a lot of people are doing is they're taking the action and going, I'm going to show, for myself first and foremost, for your family, for obviously your animals, of going, I'm going to start just taking initiative. My actions are going to speak louder than my words, as the saying goes. This is why I'm a firm believer that all these cliches, we need to listen to what those cliches are, because if we're using them but we don't know what we're saying, well, then that's a problem. And I think this is, and you nailed it. It's going, don't just take what we're saying and start spreading the information. Try to use it. This is something I'm constantly trying to do. And it's, as I said earlier, there's times where people could say, oh, I failed, or you're failing, where I've just learned to look at it as going, no, I learned something from the outcome that wasn't what I anticipated. Why did that happen? And when you look at it that way, that distraught, like, oh, I'm failing, or I can't do this. It's just going, hey, this is a way to think about survival. If it's not right, I need to make the change. Not, as we said earlier, I can't have time to sulk. It's going, if this were life or death, or you know what I mean, I need to figure it out. I don't have time for that. It's going, that didn't work. Let me try something else now. You know what I mean? And you betcha.
And I think that's leads to so many other things. But anything you want to add to that? I got to wrap up here, but anything you want to?
Yeah, failure is character building. I honestly, And a lot of people, when they see me do things, it's like, oh, you do it so easy. It's like magic. That's because you didn't see the 300 times that I failed, when I was young, trying to do these kind of things, or trying to do something in a similar vein. Like I was talking to my wife about that the other day, where like there's all kinds of different things. Like when I'm shearing the alpaca, I've got these giant metal shears that are sharp as a dickens. It cut your finger right off.
Right.
And any little bump or anything on that alpaca, and any little pulled up piece of skin, and I could shear an entire just piece
Yeah.
of bacon right out of it. And how do you deal with it? Well, as you're doing it over and over again, you just get this weird feel for it, and all of a sudden you see these people do something. It's like, well, all he did was that, and you can't explain that. Like,
Yeah.
oh no, you feel how it's different. You see, it's just, you kind of gotta. It's
Right.
like this, and you gotta feel it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that only comes with experience.
Right.
And if you didn't start with the experience, you're going to have failure, and all that failure is practicing until you get good.
Totally.
There, Michael Jordan didn't come out the womb slam dunking basketballs and things like that. uh, Tiger Woods didn't come out the womb knocking holes in one.
Yeah, but what is happening is, as you said, it's failure is building character. But what it's also doing is, you said, you get a feel for it, right? And what we would
Yep.
call a lot of times is the flow state, or being present. And what it's doing is it's taking an unknown and making it a known in your life. And how do you make an unknown a known? Is learning how to be present, not being in your head, not being in the past, not worrying. It's going, all right, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. There's a lot of, obviously, I have an outcome that I'm trying to achieve. When you get comfortable with it, you get a feel for it. You allow yourself to not just do it, but you become it. And that's, is, people can
Yes.
call it cliche, they can call it whatever, but that is what's happening. You become into this, what they would say, a flow state, or being so present that you're literally connected with what you're doing. Like like think about like Avatar, without the physical representation of like the two ponytails coming together. That's what you're doing. You're connecting with whatever it is that is there. And that's what people, when they see you, or they'll see like me when I'm doing my personal training, they're like, dude, you just, once you get in it, I'm like, it's taken so many countless hours, a lot of failures, a lot of learning, but learning how to then going, I'm in this moment now, I'm here, and just be in that moment. And it's a hard thing to do. It's not easy, but when you do it, and everyone has their skill to some degree that they're good at it, is going, okay, you're just tapping into it here. How do we, how do we broaden that window of learning how to tap into it in all these different places? So this is
Yeah.
going back to why I want to talk about connecting with the system that we're in. You then realize, oh, that's a power that's in all of our potential if we're willing to allow ourselves to go to that place. And that's why it's like people go, hey man, you have such a good outlook. It feels like everything's happening for you. Guess what? You're going into it of like The Secret, that book. But it's not just thinking you're doing it, but it's bringing it into manifestation through your actions. As you said, go act it out and go live it,
Yes.
because then it becomes reality. So
That was a perfect closing. Love it,
thanks.
brother. I can't wait to be on with you again.
Appreciate it, man. We'll do it again soon. And thank you always again for your time. Where can people find you before we run out here?
Absolutely. Feel free to mail me if you want me to correspond back to you. The best way is going to be P.O. Box 32, Alder Point, California, 95511. Or you can come to my website, theheathenwizards.com.
Awesome.
Benjamin Balderson on YouTube.
Awesome. I'll be putting all that in the show notes, man. And once again, thank you for your time. And for everyone else, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon. All right.
Thank you, brother.